Hey guys, Adam Savage here in my cave where this video will not remain for long because my obsession with armor from movies and from history has two primary sources. One is the 1981 John Boorman film Excalibur, and the second is a few weeks after I saw Excalibur, my dad took me to the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York City on Central Park's East Side to visit their armor room. And I knew the Met as a museum of cultural artifacts and historical artifacts. I had no idea there were a set of galleries devoted to suits of armor. And walking into that room with mounted knights on horseback when I was 14 absolutely shifted my entire life on its axis. And in this video, we get to go back to the source, specifically the Armor Conservation Lab at the Met, where Sean and Ted, both master armorers and conservators, will take us on a tour of how they do their work, how far it extends. And this is one of the very few places in the world where actual acquisitions the museum has are used as tools to repair other acquisitions the museum gets. I love nothing more than a historical artifact that is still getting used in regular practice, and we're about to learn all about them. All right, let's go to the Met. So Ted, we are here in the conservation lab. What does conservation mean here in the museum?
Okay.
In armor?
So conservation, what I like to think of it is as the care and feeding of the collection, right? There's a million objects in the building and there's 100-some conservators that our full-time job is to take care of everything. And that means to study it, to clean it, repair it when necessary, store it properly, display it properly, to understand all the different aspects of every object and what they're made out of and how they deteriorate, how they were constructed, what the materials are, to inform not only the curatorial staff who want to write about them or study them, but to inform the visitors so that you can come in and know that a particular armor or firearm or painting is made out of this, or that, or the other thing, but also to understand how we can preserve them for the maximum possible time, right? So I've got a 500-year-old armor. I'd like it to be a 1,000-year-old armor someday. Right. I'd like it to be a 2,000-year-old armor. I like thinking the long game, right? So if we know how things are made and how they deteriorate or fall apart, then we can think ahead and how to take care of them.
And all of this is within really some really specific, I guess, sort of specific boundaries, right? Because when you say like clean it, you don't mean put it on a polishing wheel. No. You're trying to preserve the patinas and the marks of age.
Yeah. So we have a couple of kind of rules of thumb that we use. One is do no harm.
Right.
Okay.
So remove nothing that you can see.
I mean,
give or take.
Yeah, like what we ideally we strive towards reversibility, right? So if I need to glue something back together, for example, I want to use an adhesive that can be reversed in case we discover that, oh, that's not where that part goes. Or, yep, you put it on upside down there, pal. Let's turn that over. You know?
So you prioritize hide glues and other things that can be heated and reversed?
We use some hide glues for certain applications. Yeah. We use some, modern polymer glues for other things, but like, bunging it on with some epoxy is not the way to go. Reversibility is important. But let's face it, if you're scraping rust off of a helmet, that's not reversible.
Right.
So the question is, how far do you go?
Well, you're also trying to stop that rust from continuing its journey through the armor.
Right. So we might clean something very carefully and slowly to remove only just the right amount of corrosion or grime or what have you on there without removing the patina that you mentioned. I want it to still look like an old thing when I'm done. I want it to be, not perfect and brand new and original because it isn't anymore.
Yeah.
So that's another thing is I'm not here to restore stuff to pristine,
as
perfect,
issued,
as issued, exactly. Mint condition is nice for comic books and Transformer toys still in the box, right? But if an armor came to me in mint condition, I would wonder about
Is this also complicated by the fact that the line of what is and isn't conservation has changed over the years?
Absolutely.
You sometimes have to deal with what old conservators did that they thought was great, but
Yeah, that happens too. So the Arms and Armor as a department has been around since about 1912. But there's been Arms and Armor in the museum earlier than that. Late 1800s, there were a few things. Around 1904, this big group comes in, the Duc de Dino collection. And that was partly brokered and arranged by a New Yorker named Dr. Bashford Dean, who was at the time, he was an ichthyologist, and he was teaching at Columbia. He was a curator over at the Natural History Museum, but he was really into Arms and Armor, as he should be, right?
Yeah,
okay.
totally.
Okay. You get it.
Yeah, I am right there with you.
Okay, so he saw an opportunity, I think, to heck with fish, right? And by 1912, he was a full-time curator here. He quit his other things. He was only doing Arms and Armor. And he had a really, I think, a strong understanding that the care of the collection was just as important as the acquisition. And I think that was maybe not something that was well understood by a lot of collectors at the time.
This is in 1904, 1905.
1904 is when he starts kind of arranging things over here. By 1912, he's here full time.
And that philosophy of his
is important because the other thing he did around then is he hired Daniel Tachot, who was an actual armor maker, an armorer. And
which must have been a rare occupation.
Even then,
in 1912.
There were still a lot of sort of military units that were wearing cuirasses and helmets, cavalry, that sort of thing. So there was a need for armorers. Daniel Tachot worked with Ludwig Klein, who was armorer to Napoleon III. So there was a market for it. Plus, there was a vogue at the time for collecting armor and having armors in your baronial hall.
That was part of your grand tours. You'd come home with armor. Okay.
The Americans wanted in on this. Yeah. So that's certain. That's what
I would rather have a suit of armor than a canaletto. I mean, it's a tough call, but sure.
I'm with you. I'm with you on that. So Tachot comes. He's working here, and he's a craftsman. He's an armor maker, but he has very, I think, importantly, he kind of recognized, along with Dean, that they had an obligation to protect the past, protect the history, protect the objects. So while he did do some things that we wouldn't do today, he did not do a lot of other things that were common practice at the time. Wasn't using acid, and we've heard stories of, old, armory collections where it's got a lot of rust on it. Bung it in the acid, come back the next morning. Where did it all go? Terrible stories like this. Or where, they strip them completely and remove all the gilding and all the etching, and then they're bright and shiny, and they never would have been. They would have been blued, and sad stories like this. And while there are isolated examples of that in our collection, in some cases that happened before we got it. In other cases, they were maybe a little overzealous on things, but for the most part, they were very careful with the collection. There's some restorations that we wouldn't do today, some, rebuilding of things. There's a very famous example of an armor, Scudamore armor. It came in a bunch of pieces, kind of more or less kind of as one suit, but really it was two full armors. They were missing a lot of things. And they remade all the missing pieces beautifully. And importantly, signed and dated them all. So we know that these are restorations.
So you know which parts were added and which parts were original.
Exactly which parts. And the best part is, there's one armor in particular where he had to remake the cuisse, right? And then a few years later, we got the original cuisse. And you can put them next to each other, and you can tell the difference, but he really did a good job. Yeah, they're very nice. They're very nice.
This is really neat. So the philosophy begins with, let's make sure we have protected it as much as we can, frozen from the moment we receive it.
Yeah.
But over time, the institutional knowledge gets built to be able to look through the past and understand how it came to be, how it came to look like this.
Right. And then at the same time, conservation field as a whole is developing.
Right.
Science, our knowledge, our materials that are available to us. We're getting better tools, better equipment, better knowledge. And so we are, by the time that I came here, I'm the first conservator in the department who was university trained as the conservator.
Right.
I started as an art history student, studying ancient Greece, archaeology, things like that. And I went to the University College of London Institute of Archaeology and received my Master's of Science in Conservation for Archaeology Museums. And I thought I was going to be working in the field and gluing pots back together.
Yeah.
And I got really lucky. I got an internship in Philadelphia in the Arms and Armor department. and changed my life. And I came here almost immediately after finishing in school, and I've been arms and armor ever since, because it's arms and armor.
Yeah, no. And so within the field of like modern conservation, you also might use things like X-ray technology or CAT scans to look at pieces and understand exactly how they were made from the inside.
It's super helpful to be able to X-ray an object and understand, like, aha, that piece there that I thought was, maybe removable isn't, or, oh, that's where it's riveted, or, oh, that's not solid. We can't hit that with a hammer, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or, for example, we've got a saddle that we've X-rayed recently because we weren't really sure how it was built, and can we take this part apart and it's modern fabric. We're thinking about redoing the fabric. How's this saddle actually put together? Oh, it's fascinating. The giant metal straps that are in there, nails everywhere. Oh, those are modern nails. Look, that all bit is totally restored. X-ray tells us that.
You can see that. You can see the old nails versus the new nails manufacturing process. Right. Oh, wow.
Or we can take an XRF and look at an object, and X-ray fluorescence will tell us elemental composition. Is this gold, or has this been restored paint? Oh, that's gold there. Oh, and look, mercury traces. Hey, nice, amalgam gilding.
Oh,
that's super interesting, right?
And you guys might also end up with stuff that has some dangerous materials in it.
We've had plenty of dangerous materials. So it's an arc.
Yeah,
we're learning constantly. In here, we're trying to mix, the old, use the hammer, rivet sets, replacing leather, stuff that Tachot used to do as kind of a matter of course. We're maintaining that knowledge.
Yeah.
We're still applying it. And I have some examples I can show you. But we're also trying to, do the sort of more modern, like we sneak up on it. We go slow. We make sure it's reversible. We do no harm. What you do in haste, you will regret at your leisure is the rule that I was taught by
I love it.
The armor that was here when I started.
Well, what I love is that you're still using all these old techniques, these original techniques, but you're using modern technology to make sure you're not applying them poorly for conservation.
That's a good summation of it. Absolutely.
That is super thrilling.
So the idea is that, 500 years from now, there's still the armor of Henry V upstairs. Or Henry VIII, sorry. Henry V. Now that would be a coup. Henry VIII upstairs.